Most people think manifestation is a mind game: believe harder, visualize longer, affirm louder. But that entire approach hides a truth almost no one talks about. The people who manifest with ease aren't the ones stacking belief on belief. They're the ones who stopped forcing belief altogether. They let go of the mental noise telling them who they should be, how life should unfold, and what the universe is supposed to reward. Manifestation isn't about strengthening your belief system. It's about dissolving the story that blocks your natural frequency, the frequency that operates effortlessly when you're not trying to control every outcome. If belief alone unlocked miracles, the world would be full of them. Millions of people believe in a better life with everything they've got. They visualize it, affirm it, pray for it, and still repeat the same emotional cycles. Not because they lack faith, but because belief is a function of the mind, and manifestation doesn't happen in the mind. It happens in the field. The quantum doesn't respond to your positive thinking. It responds to what you are when the mind finally gets quiet. It reads the vibrational imprint held beneath your thoughts, the residue of old experiences, unresolved emotions, forgotten memories, and sensory patterns your body has been carrying for decades. You don't manifest what you believe. Intellectually, you manifest the frequency you haven't yet forgotten. This is where the paradox begins to reveal itself. The mind keeps trying to add new beliefs, new narratives, new layers of meaning, thinking that more information equals more transformation. But in the quantum world, addition often creates interference. The more mental noise you accumulate, the more distortion you introduce into your signal. You say you want abundance, but your nervous system is still referencing old scarcity. You say you want love, but your emotional body is still echoing past betrayal. You say you want expansion, but the identity you inhabit was built in moments of contraction. No amount of believing can override what the body still remembers. Forgetfulness in the quantum sense is not a loss of knowledge. It's the quieting of internal static. It's the gentle erasure of the emotional associations that color your perception of the present. It's the release of the past long enough for the field to read a clear frequency again. Most people think they're struggling to believe in a new reality, but what they're truly struggling with is the weight of the memories they haven't dissolved. The mind tries to focus forward, but the body keeps referencing backward. This friction creates a distorted signal, and the field mirrors that distortion perfectly. Quantum physics offers a metaphor for this. When a particle exists in a cloud of probability, it is influenced by countless variables: noise, interference, prior states. But once the environment becomes clear and ordered, the particle collapses with precision. The collapse happens not because the particle believes in a particular outcome, but because the surrounding field is free of competing signals. Your reality works the same way. The collapse of a timeline depends less on what you're trying to believe and more on what you're willing to release. The field responds to coherence, and coherence emerges when the internal clutter begins to fall away. Spiritual traditions have whispered this truth for centuries. The mystics who manifested effortlessly weren't obsessively reinforcing beliefs. They were emptying themselves. They weren't convincing the universe of what they wanted. They were dissolving everything that wasn't aligned with who they were becoming. Their power came from spaciousness, not certainty; from quietness, not effort; from inner stillness, not mental repetition. They understood that the universe doesn't respond to the loudest thought. It responds to the clearest energy. You've felt glimpses of this before. Moments when something in your life shifted without you trying. Moments wherein opportunity arrived the second you stopped obsessing over it. Moments where clarity replaced anxiety the instant you stopped wrestling with your own thoughts. Those weren't accidents. Those were moments when your system became quiet enough for the field to finally hear you. In those brief pockets of stillness, your identity loosened just enough for the future to slip through the cracks of the past. Forgetting a fro in this context means loosening your grip on the version of yourself that no longer fits the life you're calling in. It means letting the emotional charges dissolve until the body no longer references an outdated timeline. It means releasing the stories your mind has memorized so deeply that you mistake them for truth. Belief tries to build a new structure on top of an old foundation. Forgetting clears the ground, so a new foundation can emerge naturally. This is why manifestation feels easier for some individuals. It's not because they're gifted or special. It's because they carry less internal interference. Their past isn't as loud. Their emotional memory doesn't dominate their signal. They don't filter the present through layers of fear, tension, or expectation. Their frequency is clean, enough that the field can reflect it immediately. Their power comes from absence, the absence of internal contradiction. If you've been trying to believe your way into a new life, you're not failing. You're simply using the wrong entry point. The universe doesn't need your belief. It needs your clarity. And clarity isn't created by strengthening the mind. It's created by softening the noise between you and the frequency you were meant to hold. This is where the journey truly begins. Not with force, but with release, not with faith, but with forgetting. Forgetting the past version of you that keeps speaking over the frequency of your becoming. If believing were truly the engine of manifestation, then every moment you tried to believe would instantly reshape your life. But the field doesn't move according to effort. It moves according to the emotional baseline you carry without even noticing. And nothing anchors that baseline more powerfully than memory. Not the memories you consciously recall, but the ones stored inside your muscles, your breath, your pulse, your reflexes. The past lives in the body far more deeply than it lives in the mind. And the body broadcasts that past into the quantum field with unwavering loyalty. This is why the universe often reflects a version of you that feels outdated. It's mirroring the version your nervous system hasn't forgotten yet. Memory isn't just a story. It's chemistry. It's voltage. It's the silent rhythm your heart adopts each time you brace for disappointment. The tension your shoulders hold because they once carried fear. The shallow breath your lungs learned in moments of uncertainty. These patterns become emotional signatures, and emotional signatures become the frequencies the quantum responds to. You may think you're signaling abundance, but if your body has memorized scarcity as normal, that's the frequency it emits. You may set intentions for love, but if your nervous system was shaped in environments where love felt unstable, the field receives instability as your default vibration. The universe doesn't ignore your desires. It just responds more quickly to the signals you repeat. Most often, it's easy to confuse belief with alignment because belief lives in the mind and feels accessible. You can change your thoughts quickly. You can rewrite a narrative. You can visualize a new outcome. But the body doesn't update through language. It updates through safety, repetition, and emotional experience. The mind might insist that the future will be different, but the body clings to the familiar because the familiar feels predictable, and predictability to the nervous system always feels safer than possibility. This is why the emotional past has such a strong influence on your timeline. The body keeps trying to recreate what it understands. When people feel blocked, they usually assume something is wrong with their technique. They think they're not believing hard enough or not visualizing clearly enough. But the real issue is simpler and far more human. The emotional past is speaking louder than the imagined future. The internal signal is filled with echoes of the person you used to be. Not because that person is still who you are, but because the body hasn't yet learned how to forget them. The field responds to that echo until the echo fades. Neuroscience explains this perfectly. The brain is a prediction machine, constantly using past experiences to forecast what will happen next. If your past carries the imprint of fear, your brain predicts fear. If your past carries the imprint of disappointment, your brain predicts disappointment. This prediction happens beneath awareness, shaping your physiological state before you even have a chance to think. The prediction becomes your vibration, and the vibration becomes your manifestation. This is why so many people feel like they're taking 2 steps forward and 2 steps back. They set a powerful intention in the morning, but by the afternoon their body has quietly returned to the emotional tone it memorized years ago. Not because they lack discipline, not because they don't want it enough, but because the body is loyal to the past until you teach it a new normal. Memory becomes gravity. It pulls your frequency backward even as your mind tries to move forward. But something profound happens when you recognize this. You stop treating your past as a psychological story and start seeing it as an energetic imprint. You stop fighting yourself and begin understanding yourself. You stop blaming your lack of belief and start noticing the emotional patterns still waiting to be released. And that awareness, simple, gentle awareness, is the first step toward dissolving the weight memory holds over your signal. You don't have to erase your past to manifest a new future. You only have to stop letting it dominate your vibration. The universe doesn't need you to believe harder. It needs you to forget the emotional habits that contradict the life you're stepping into. Forgetting in this sense means letting the body feel something new long enough to trust that it's real. It means softening the reflexes that no longer match your becoming. It means loosening your grip on the emotional tones that were once necessary for survival but are no longer necessary for creation. If you feel the truth of this, if you recognize that what's holding you back isn't a lack of faith, but a surplus of emotional memory, then anchor that awareness right now, because naming it begins to dissolve it. Type in the comments, "I release what my body no longer needs." This isn't a mantra, it's a signal. It marks the moment you begin choosing a frequency that isn't built from history. Once this emotional weight begins to lift, the field finally has room to respond to the version of you that has been waiting underneath the noise. And it's in that quiet inner space that manifestation stops being a mental exercise and starts becoming the natural consequence of who you're willing to become. There is a kind of forgetting that doesn't erase your past. It releases its authority. A forgetting that isn't about losing memories, but removing the emotional charge that keeps those memories active in your vibration. This selective forgetting is one of the most advanced forms of manifestation. Yet almost nobody talks about it because it doesn't sound glamorous. It sounds quiet, subtle, internal. But it is exactly this subtle work that shifts your frequency more effectively than any affirmation or visualization ever could. When the weight of the old emotional imprint dissolves, the field finally receives a clean signal, not a mixed one, built from who you were and who you're trying to become, but a single coherent frequency anchored in the present. The mind thinks forgetting means ignoring. The nervous system knows forgetting means safety, until the body realizes it no longer needs to carry old reflexes of fear, protection, or hypervigilance. It will keep replaying the same emotional patterns, not because the past is haunting you, but because your biology hasn't learned to stand in the present without referencing what came before. Real forgetting is the moment your body stops bracing for what it once expected and begins opening to what it has never experienced. That shift is physiological first, vibrational second, and manifestational third. To understand how forgetting works on a quantum level, imagine your identity as a network of emotional nodes, each one a memory tied to a specific sensation. These nodes communicate with each other like electrical circuits. When one is activated, others flicker to life. This creates a pattern, and that pattern becomes your baseline frequency. The quantum field interacts with this pattern, reading it as your current state of being. But when you soften just one node, one emotional association, the entire pattern begins to loosen. The circuit weakens, the frequency shifts. This is why even a brief moment of genuine peace can disrupt years of internal tension. You don't have to dismantle the whole structure at once. Dissolving one emotional link begins the unraveling. Selective forgetting is the process of deactivating these emotional nodes one by one, not through force, but through presence. Every time you notice an old reaction rising and you choose to breathe instead of brace, soften instead of tighten, open instead of collapse, you weaken the influence of that past imprint. You are teaching your nervous system a new response. And each new response becomes a vote for the version of you who isn't trapped in yesterday's chemistry. Over time, the emotional weight of the old identity fades until the body no longer references it automatically. That's what forgetting looks like. The absence of the reflex that once controlled you. The field responds to this absence differently than it responds to belief. Belief tries to add a new narrative. Forgetting removes the static. Belief asks the universe to listen harder. Forgetting gives the universe a clear channel. When the internal noise drops, the external world can finally reorganize around the frequency your being naturally emits when it's not distorted by memory. This is the true essence of manifestation. Not the construction of a new identity, but the dissolution of the one that was built from survival instead of creation. This is also why so many spiritual traditions speak about emptiness, silence, surrender, and stillness. They are not romantic concepts. They are vibrational technologies. When you enter that state of inner quiet, even for a moment, you create a gap in the circuitry of the old identity. And in that gap, the future can finally enter. Possibility needs space. New timelines need space. The universe cannot fill what is already full of old emotional residue. Selective forgetting creates that space by loosening your grip on the patterns your body believes it still needs. Think about the times in your life when clarity arrived unexpectedly. In the shower, on a walk, during a quiet morning moment. These weren't coincidences. They were moments when forgetting briefly occurred. The mind stopped rehearsing the past. The body stopped anticipating threat. And your frequency opened long enough for insight to slip through. If you could stretch those moments, widen them, repeat them, embodiment would transform effortlessly. But selective forgetting isn't only emotional, it's neurological. Synapses strengthen through repetition and weaken through disuse. When you stop feeding an emotional story, the neural pathways that support it begin to shrink. When you stop reacting from the same old trigger, the brain stops investing energy in that pattern. When you redirect your attention to the present instead of replaying the past, the neural map reorganizes. Your biology literally forgets the old version of you. And when the brain forgets, the field responds instantly because the observer has changed. What makes this process powerful is that you don't need grand rituals or extreme discipline to activate it. You only need awareness. Each time you catch yourself reenacting an old emotional script and gently choose a different response, you create a fracture in the timeline where the old identity lived. That fracture is the birth of the new frequency. Forgetting isn't passive. It's the quietest form of self-creation. This is the moment the field begins, mirroring the new you. Not because you convinced it, but because you stopped contradicting it. When the emotional noise fades, your energy becomes spacious enough for alignment to take root. The future doesn't arrive with a dramatic fanfare. It slips in gracefully through the space you cleared by, releasing everything you no longer need to carry. Selective forgetting is freedom. It's the dissolution of the emotional scaffolding that kept you connected to timelines you outgrew. And once that scaffolding begins to fall away, the universe doesn't hesitate. It fills the empty space with the frequency you're finally ready to hold. There's a point on the path where something subtle but undeniable shifts inside you. You stop feeling like you're trying to become a new version of yourself. And you start feeling like you're remembering something ancient, something that was always yours but buried beneath layers of noise and emotional residue. Instead of forcing change, you begin creating space. Instead of convincing yourself, you begin clearing yourself. Instead of adding more beliefs, more intentions, more techniques, you start letting things fall away. And in that clearing, you realize something powerful. Manifestation doesn't happen because you built a new identity. It happens because you stopped carrying the one that interfered with your signal. The quantum field is exquisitely responsive to emptiness. Not emptiness as in lack, but emptiness as in openness. A state where your energy isn't cluttered with old conclusions. Old tensions, old narratives. When you reach this space, even briefly, life reorganizes around you with a kind of effortlessness that feels almost unreal. It's like the universe has been waiting for the static to quiet down so it could finally deliver what has been aligned with you all along. Creation flows into empty space the way water fills a hollow. It doesn't need permission. It just needs room. Many people misunderstand this state, imagining that emptiness means indifference or detachment. But true emptiness is alive. It's a state of neutrality so spacious that the body stops anticipating what happened yesterday. You're not numbing yourself. You're liberating yourself. You're no longer looking at the world through the filter of who you used to be. You're standing in the present with enough clarity for the field to mirror a new version of you. Neutrality is not the absence of feeling. It's the absence of distortion. And distortion is the only thing that ever held you back. When the emotional signatures of the past dissolve, your timeline stops looping. You stop collapsing realities that belong to former versions of yourself. You stop vibrating in reflexive fear or scarcity or self-protection. The nervous system no longer braces for impact. Your heart stops beating like it's still inside an old story. Your breath expands. Your awareness sharpens. A new kind of intelligence rises from inside your chest. Calm, grounded, intuitive. This is the identity that manifests by absence. The one that emerges when the noise is gone. This version of you doesn't need to believe. Belief becomes irrelevant when you're not holding on to anything that contradicts the truth you're stepping into. Belief is only necessary when part of you still doubts. When doubt dissolves through forgetting, the need to believe dissolves with it. You simply are, and the field mirrors. You're being far more precisely than you're hoping. This is why the most powerful manifestors don't think in terms of faith. They think in terms of alignment. Faith is mental. Alignment is chemical, emotional, vibrational, embodied. As this identity stabilizes, something else begins to happen. You stop chasing outcomes because you finally feel filled from within. The future doesn't feel distant anymore. It feels intimate, like it's leaning toward you. You sense that what's meant for you is already touching the edges of your field. You don't need to pull it in. Your signal draws it naturally. The more you soften internally, the stronger that pull becomes. The universe listens closely when your internal world becomes quiet enough for its response to be heard. And here's the beauty. Once you taste this state, even for a moment, you'll never confuse manifestation with mental work again. You'll understand at a visceral level that the universe is not waiting for you to prove your belief. It's waiting for you to stop rehearsing the versions of yourself that were shaped by fear, expectation, or survival. When those layers fall away, you become the empty channel through which reality can express something entirely new, not an echo of the past, but a signal of the future. This is creation in its purest form. If you feel something shifting inside you right now, a softening, a recognition, a quiet yes, it's because you're already stepping into this space. Your field is recalibrating. Your old emotional signatures are loosening. You're beginning to manifest through absence, not effort. And once this pathway opens, the journey ahead becomes less about adding and more about allowing, less about controlling and more about receiving, less about believing and more about forgetting everything that once distorted your signal. And if this resonates deeply, if you can sense that you're ready not just for insight but for integration, for actually embodying this internal emptiness that attracts coherence, then I want to guide you deeper into this work. Empty space isn't a void. It's the birthplace of the next version of you.